Oh! You might be onto something there, Carolyn. Maybe if you did it like this. Oh. It doesn't flip backwards, it flips in place.
You can't stick a landing, you know?
Yeah. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hello. Friday legislative update time from the ASBA World Headquarters. It's a little cold outside today. ASBA, we got our penguins.
It's National Penguin Day.
Well, it will be on April 25th, apparently.
February 25th.
February 25th? April 25th.
Okay.
Yeah. We're getting ahead of the game in the celebration. I wasn't here last week, early this week, because I was in DC with all of our friends from NSBA, but Lee and Carolyn had you covered on committee, so I'm going to turn it over to them first. They're going to tell us what went down on Monday and Tuesday.
So in the Senate, we had a couple bills that we were opposing that cleared the first hurdle, unfortunately, that we want to draw your attention to. One was Senate Bill 1122. That would make it so that in a school district consolidation election, just the total number of votes cast, if they approved that, the consolidation would go through, rather than having every district involved having to approve the consolidation. So we oppose that. We have it in our agenda, that our political agenda, that is, that every district involved in consolidation should approve that consolidation, so a bigger district can't eat up a little one. The other one is 1146. It is about seizure management treatment plans, something that we know is really important to the health and safety of a lot of students. We're sympathetic to that, but the way it's written right now is pretty broad. We're concerned about, teachers being expected to be nurses and unfunded mandates. All those things we know y'all care about, so we're working with the sponsor on some amendments to that to make it more narrow and a little more easily implemented. 1224, I'm sure y'all heard a lot about. That was an ESA bill that would make it so students living on a reservation could attend a school in an adjacent state within 2 miles of the boundary of that reservation. So it didn't expand who could receive an ESA, but it does expand the schools they could use it at. We're opposed to that, as long as, well, with SOS and all of our other friends in that regard. And the last one is 1357, Senator Allen bill. We saw something similar from John Fillmore in the House last week. Would require every instructional material used in the classroom to be approved by the governing board prior to being used. Currently, it's just the main textbooks have to be approved, and any supplemental materials can be approved after the fact, so teachers can have a little more flexibility with their scheduling to put in cool news articles, things like that. Senator Allen said that's not her intention to stifle teachers' creativity, so we're also talking about some amendments to make that a little more narrowly tailored. And Carolyn will talk about what happened in the House.
Yeah, our House committee, it was pretty loaded with a lot of bills. House Bill 2106, it was to establish a uniform system for financial records for school audits. This bill was actually killed in this week's committee, but it will resurface next week in our next committee. House Bill 2110 reflects a Senate bill that was introduced a couple of weeks ago. It creates disciplinary reporting requirements for non-certified employees. It's very similar to the reporting requirements for certified employees. And for House Bill 2111, it appropriates $10 million to Arizona Department of Education for a 5-year consolidation grant to consolidate resources between schools.
Thank you, Carolyn. Sorry, I let my penguin go a little bit early there. It's making noise. So, good stuff last week. Like we said, we got a little bit heavier agenda actually in the House this week. Even still, it's 3 pages long. We're closing in on the deadline, so there's a lot of stuff going on, but most of it is pro forma stuff, but there are a couple that are of note. One, Carolyn mentioned 2106. It failed last week. It's back this week. We're okay with it. It would require right now boards to accept their audit findings on a roll call vote, which is kind of awkward. I think the goal there is to get it to be a general session vote, not a consent agenda vote. So we'll work on that, because a roll call vote on something like that is pretty unnecessary, and don't think, like, what if
you can't vote no on an audit?
Yeah, like, we don't accept the findings? I don't know. Anyway, so we'll get with that. Another interesting one, House Bill 2206. Schools' dress codes, graduation ceremonies. It would prohibit districts' dress code from including, for graduation specifically, from precluding students from wearing items of cultural significance, like native cultural significance or Latino, cultural significance, things like that. And then also there are a couple bills on CTEDs. One to exclude CTEDs from the letter grading system because it's duplicative. We support that. One to create some funding for internships, meaning that students with an internship placement in a CTED would get ADM funding. And then finally, one more, fourth grade, fourth year funding. That's House Bill 2741. We support that as well. Would allow CTEDs to get funding for ninth graders and fourth year students in specific fields. A little bit cumbersome, but we'd prefer obviously universal ninth grade funding option, but that doesn't appear to be in the cards this session. So we're with House Bill 2741. Real quick on the Senate side, a bunch of stuff.
If I may interject, the superintendent is going to do a state of special education address to the Senate, which is a little different than what she did in the House. So if you are around and can tune in, that should be interesting.
Great. There is a Senate Bill 1356, which has to do with the civics requirement. It would allow you to give the civics test in 8th grade, and if they pass it in 8th grade, then a student would never have to take it again. It also raises the score, though, from 60 questions to 70 questions. There is an appropriation for the dyslexia screening that we passed last year, Senate Bill 1491. That is some changes that came out of the interim committee that met over the summer. A lot of work by the Department and State Board of Education in that one. We support that. And then the last one to note, Senate Bill 1503. So this bill is a good, well-intentioned thing aiming to protect students from potentially getting in a bad situation with school staff and communicating on personal devices and outside of sort of school time. We do have some concerns though about how it's drafted. It's very specific and we think it would be very difficult to implement the way it is now. So we're continuing to work with Senator Boyer, he's the sponsor on that. We certainly support policies that protect students and staff actually, but we have to be able to implement them. So that one, stay tuned for more information on that. Whew. Other than that, after this week, 2 more weeks to go before the first deadline. So we're creeping up on, 1,500 bills introduced between both houses. So it's getting crazy out there.
It's getting wild.
But we're hanging in there.
We're getting close to the introduction deadline. We're getting close to the flipping deadline.
So stay tuned to our updates. Stay tuned to your emails. Stay tuned to all the resources the ASBA has for you to figure out what's going on in the legislature. And of course, we'll break it all down for you every Friday right here on the ASBA live update. So have yourself a good weekend. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.